Every entrepreneur I know has this deep, burning desire to create more stuff and to get their ideas out there in the world. But for a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, they're missing a couple key steps that will allow them to actually profit more from their ideas and, most importantly, protect their very valuable intellectual property. Hi, I'm Melanie Benson and I'm America's leading small business optimizer. And if we're new friends here on this podcast, then let me just tell you a little bit about the series. You know, my vision for you is that you're going to learn how to optimize your business. And by optimizing, I mean, how can you make the business you're working so hard to create perform better so that you can work less in the business and more in doing the things that you love the most. And each week I'm bringing you a thought leader, a visionary entrepreneur, a change agent, somebody who's up to really big things, and they've learned a secret or two about optimizing their business so that you can go behind the scenes with them and get to making your business work that much better. Now, our guest today is somebody who I've been bouncing around the industry with for quite some time. Her name is Elizabeth Potts Weinstein, and Elizabeth is a small business attorney who helps entrepreneurs, artists, coaches, and consultants get the legal stuff out of their way so they can get back to helping their clients and, most importantly, and I think we will all agree, changing the world and making big money, right? So, Elizabeth, thanks for joining us here today. And I got to say, you know, on a personal note, I've been watching her emails for a really long time, and all of a sudden she started having this conversation about getting your materials trademarked and really protecting your intellectual property properly. And I'm like, okay, ding, ding, ding. You know, we need to have this conversation on the show. And that's because oftentimes I have clients who come into our coaching sessions and they're just racked because they don't have a leg to stand on in protecting the materials or the copyrighted information that they work so hard to create. So I thought it'd be a really great conversation to have today and give you some tips and some insights into what you could do to make sure that your materials that you're putting out in the world are protected. So, Elizabeth, thanks for coming on today. And you're up north, right? You're in Northern California?
Yes, in San Jose, California, so Silicon Valley.
Great. So you're still in the somewhat enjoyable weather before the cold front happens for those of us on the West Coast.
It's like it was a little bit chilly when I went out this morning, and I was like, oh, it's winter, which means I wore a sweater. So
yeah, not a jacket, but a sweater. I know.
Yeah.
We just had a little bit of the crazy cold breeze here in LA. You know, it never really gets much colder than 50 degrees here. Thank goodness. It's just a beautiful thing. But when those winds start snapping off the mountains, it's like, oh, this must be a little bit of what it's like to live in cold weather.
It's weather. Oh my goodness.
I know. So, you know, let's maybe take a step back and look into the catalyst for how you got into the work of being a type of entrepreneur, if you will, somebody who works with small business owners to make sure that they're protected on the legal front. What was that for you that got you into that line of work?
Well, you know, years and years ago now, I was working in a big giant law firm doing work for big corporate clients like, you know, Microsoft and people like that. And I left doing that to start my own business, and I did a number of different businesses over the years. And so I would have some success, but none of them were really, really clicking. They weren't the right thing. And I'd have good months, you know what I mean? I had good launches, and then things wouldn't pan out, or I'd get bored or whatever. And until a couple years ago, I finally realized, part of the reason I hadn't been really using my legal expertise as much as I could is because I associated so much of it with how big law firms work. Even though people were asking me all the time legal advice questions, and they wanted me to do this work, and I kept saying, no, if I do this, I'm going to be like the job that I had at a law firm that I hated. And I finally got to the point where I realized, well, actually, I don't have to do that. I can set up my law firm however I want and serve the kind of clients that I want and who I already know and who I enjoy. And so that was one of the big things for me, was realizing that I could take all this expertise and experience that I had and reinvent my own industry and set things up in a way that I love, work with people that I love, and how I charge is different, and, you know, all kinds of things like that. And it didn't have to be one or the other. I think it's a mistake a lot of people make. They quit their corporate job or whatever, and they completely abandon it and go the exact opposite. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be something where you use all these new things that you've learned, but you still pull in the expertise that you have. So that was really the big thing for me, was combining all that into something that's really, truly me.
Yeah, so having a business that supports your life and the way you want to live.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it utilizes all of you.
How novel.
And, yeah.
So that you have doggies that can hang out on your floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you got into this line of work, what is the biggest problem that you see entrepreneurs are getting themselves into that you focus on solving?
A lot of what I'm solving is people have so much overwhelm dealing with the legal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be that they've read a book of all these legal things that they're supposed to do. They've heard all kinds of horror stories from people. They read blog posts and they're like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff. And they start getting into it and researching it themselves, maybe thinking they're going to do it themselves. And it can end up seeming incredibly complicated because there's so many little things to do. Besides effective contracts and forming a business entity, and there's getting licenses and all these other documents you have to find. And then there's trademarks and copyrights. And it's just such a huge laundry list of things. You can't be an expert in everything. So a lot of what I do really is, I have clients who come in, a lot of times brain dumping. Here's all this stuff that I know I need to do and all the problems that are going on. And it's just figuring out, what are we going to do in what order? Making sure we don't miss something. And also making the decision on, do we actually need to do all these things? Because sometimes one of the other things that happens is people read blog posts or whatever, or books, and they're like, everyone has to do X. Everyone has to have a trademark, or everyone has to have an LLC, or everyone has to do something. And well, it's a lot more complicated than that. Maybe you don't, or maybe you need something a little bit different. And that's something that's really hard to figure out on your own. So, it's really clearing up that overwhelm and helping them figure out exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, and I just heard in there too, it's like knowing what to do and then what not to do is really valuable, because some people are dumping thousands of dollars into trademarking and copywriting and doing things that might be premature or maybe not even necessary, because you can't trademark it or you can't copyright it because it's not appropriate. So really, in a way, you're kind of like a guide to help people really use their legal process more effectively and make sure you're getting the right things handled so that you're not going to have a loss of profits by doing the wrong things at the wrong time.
Yeah, like with trademarks, I mean, anyone who's ever applied for a trademark knows, each time you apply for a trademark, even if you do it yourself, you don't even hire a lawyer, you're paying the trademark office $300 and something for that trademark application, and you might not get it. And there's other fees too that have come up. So if you start doing a whole lot of them, it's not like domain names where each one's $10. It's a much more expensive proposition. And so you might not get it. You might be doing it prematurely. And that happens a lot too, is I'll have someone come in who's still in the brainstorming stage. Mm-hmm. And there's a catch-22 about it, because on one hand, you don't want to not file your trademark application and someone else get it. So people have that fear. On the other hand, you do want to be sure that this is something that you want, since it does take, it could take as little as 6 months, but typically it's more like a year and a half before you're going to get a trademark to actually go through. And so, you have to take each more of a long-term kind of, or mid-term kind of proposition. And a lot of people aren't ready for that quite yet.
Mm. So what are a couple of things that you should consider about going after a trademark? If you've created some new content or a new program and you're thinking, should I trademark this? Should I copyright it? What should I do?
Right. So first, looking at the difference between copyright and trademark. So like trademarks are typically going to be, typically it's a name, it could be a logo, it could be a tagline, it's some sort of phrase or symbol, it can also even be a smell. And colors and schemes and things that are associated with the product or service, that the customer or client would say, oh, I can just see from the shape of that bottle that that's a Coca-Cola. That's the kind of thing that's trademarked. Copyright is all of the creative work, all the creations that you create, and whether it's writings, whether it's a recording of a podcast, whether it's artwork that hangs on a wall. As soon as you create those things, you have a copyright interest in them. You can also register the copyright, which makes it easier. You have to do that to be able to sue somebody, but you do have some rights there automatically. So when someone creates an ebook or something, they have copyright interest over the content. And then the title or the logos or these kind of things might be trademarkable. A lot of times it's like the such and such system. That's the kind of thing that people are thinking about trademarking. And then so you have to think about knowing what the difference is. And then when you're looking at this phrase, you may want to trademark. First thing to do is just Google it. And I say that because a lot of people don't just Google it. They think, well, this must be novel. No one else must be using this because I just invented this in my head. And it's like, maybe that's not true. And it's fairly often that people get to me and the first thing I do is Google it. And I'm like, there's these 5 other people who are using this already. So you first want to Google it and see who else is out there. They're using it. And it's a good idea to do that before you commit to it yourself and start using it. Because I've also seen that too, where people come up with this amazing idea, even build the website and everything and spend thousands of dollars. And then they get a cease and desist letter from the person who has a trademark. And really, they should have known. Even if it's a really nice cease and desist letter, it still means that you're going to have to not use that anymore. So, really, when you're still just in the very beginning brainstorming stage, it's a great idea to just actually Google all those things. And you can look up on the Patent and Trademark Office has a search place where you can search trademarks. What a lawyer's going to do is going to be more complicated, but you can at least do a simple version of it.
Sure.
And just do that when you're still at the brainstorming stage before you get to the point where you start spending money.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because I've had several people, because I've been in business for so long now, who have inadvertently used trademarked or even stuff that we've been working on that's out there. It's like you don't want to create brand confusion. Like you don't really want to be seen as the person who's using someone else's keywords because everybody's like, hey, why would you do that? So it's just important to do anyway. But then if you get into a place where you really are trying to protect your intellectual property and you don't have that. In my experience, you don't really have much of a leg to stand on if you haven't done your due diligence and made sure you're in you've got something that you can trademark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want something. Yeah, that's the thing too. You want something that's possible to trademark,
right?
Because sometimes when people pick a phrase that there is their such and such system, they pick things that make great keywords,
right?
But a lot of times what makes great keywords is the opposite of what makes a great trademark. Because great trademarks, the best trademarks are things that have kind of an arbitrariness. Like Amazon.com is a great trademark because Amazon it's not books.com, it's Amazon.com. It's a totally random word that has a connotation of bigness and things. So I see why they picked it. But it has this randomness to it. And that makes a really great trademark. Versus books.com, they're never going to be able to trademark that. Obviously, it's just the generic term for what they're doing. And so there's a lot of times when people have things that are kind of in between. They're a phrase or words that are very descriptive of what they're doing. Makes it really easy to communicate to clients and customers. Makes great keywords, but not a great trademark. And it's especially important if you're thinking that this may be a system that you may want to license out to people. Maybe you want to be the coach for coaches and you're going to license this out. It really has to be trademarkable. You have to be able to get a registered trademark. And that comes up a lot. And that's why I see a lot of times that's where the trademark stuff tends to be the most vital, is when you're going to license to the other coaches or consultants or to corporations or whatever. You have to be able to get registered trademarks on that to really make it valuable. Because you're going to need to enforce your trademarks on behalf of your licensees. So it becomes a much bigger issue, especially if you're thinking that big of a picture.
Yeah, well said. And so when is the best time to start the trademarking process if you're going to get a trademark?
Well, it's, I think in a perfect world, you would have an attorney that you're working with that you can bring in really early to at least get a consultation about it, to just make sure, okay, is this even possible to trademark?
So it's named properly even before you start the process.
Right, yeah, even before you start spending any money on it. And you want to be and it also depends on your budget. I've had clients who have a fairly large budget, and so we can file trademarks relatively early in the process. But in a perfect world, we could have an unlimited budget. We could all do that, file things relatively early, knowing that some of these things won't pan out. Some of these programs won't launch well, and we decide not going to use it. the smaller your budget, you may push it a little bit farther out when you actually do the trademark, because you want to test the market a little bit and make sure that this is actually the thing you want to do. In that case, you can start putting that little TM after things.
Yeah.
And because as soon as you start using something in commerce and start selling that product or service, you do have some state law, common law, trademark rights over it. And also, it communicates to the world that you are going to protect this trademark. And it also helps discipline you internally, because you want to make sure that you don't use your own words in a generic way. You want to make sure that you're always talking about it as that brand, and you're not just starting using these words generically in a sentence, because that's one of the things that happens too at the Patent and Trademark Office, they Google you and they Google how you're using it. And they want to make sure that you're not using it in a generic way. You're not saying things like Googling, which actually is a generic term, which has been a problem for them. And a lot of companies have that problem. Almost a lot of trademark, everyone referred to all tissue as Kleenex and Band-Aids and things. So it's really important to have that discipline inside your own organization to treat it, even if you're not yet ready to register the trademark, to start treating it that way internally.
Got it. Good points. And I would imagine, being a lawyer in the business world and having your own evolution of business, that you've probably experienced a lot of ups and downs as a business owner over the years. I'm kind of curious, switching gears here a little bit, what has been one of the biggest challenges that you've personally faced in the role of being a business lawyer?
I think like legal kind of things.
Or just like anything, you're a business owner too, you're an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of times it's really easy for us all to paint okay, everything's all rosy, things are awesome. But, we're all like dealing with like, how do we be the best business? How do we be the best version of us in business all the time? And, so we have good times with that. And then sometimes it's like, holy crap, I had no idea this education was going to be this expensive.
Lawyers education is really expensive. Drives me crazy. They all think that we're at some big gigantic firm, and I'm like, I miss expensing that stuff out back in the day. But yeah, I think one thing that is, I think, always hard, and I keep forgetting and remembering, and it's come up lately, is with the classic when things get really busy and you have a whole lot of clients and then you forget to keep marketing. Mm-hmm. Like this up and down, and I have done it so many times, and it happened this year too, where I was super, super, super busy, and then all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, I haven't written a blog post. How did that happen? I have checklists and things. And then that up and down thing starts happening again if you're not careful about keeping up all your systems and about making sure that all the marketing is still happening, even when have a ton of clients. So you don't have the crazy up and down. One of the other things that's happened right now is I just hired a project manager, and I've had people work for me in the past. And then for a while, I was running again as a sole proprietor. Well, still a corporation, but as a solo person. And I forgot about, when you bring in someone new, it takes a while to have that person actually make you more money. Like in the beginning, they're an expense. Mm-hmm. And now we're getting to a point where it's totally, at 3 months, it's working wonderfully. But there's always ups and downs with things, no matter how long you've been doing it. And then you end up learning the same lesson, but at a different level, and hopefully it takes you less time. So I think that's one thing, is you don't ever get to there where you've learned all the lessons and you're now a successful business owner person who knows all answers to things. What actually happens is you see the problems sooner and you can fix them faster, but you still kind of run into them again and then. It just, you can just turn things over quicker.
Yeah.
Much
it's
better.
Almost like it's an oxymoron to think that entrepreneur and problem-free can coexist. like as entrepreneurs, we tend to just break things and it's a little bit of there's a chaos and a risk that we're always in that generates certain types of problems. And so I love that you just said, like, one of the things we have to optimize is how to be really good problem solvers. How do we recognize and learn how to fix them or adapt to them faster? And so, this kind of goes back to a point that I truly believe, and that is, if you want to be a really, really happy sane, and profitable business owner, your job is to get really, really good at being a business owner, meaning you have to learn how to think and perform at higher levels of flexibility, adaptability, and power, so that you're not letting the stuff around you affect you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I think, and you get faster and better at it all the time. And it is practice, just like learning any skill, learning to play the piano, learning to be the Olympic gymnast, whatever it is. It is all these hours that we're putting into this, and getting better and better. And part of it is educational stuff, and then part of it is just the practical doing of it and making mistakes. And you're going to keep making mistakes, and there'll be different ones, hopefully. And and then also you as your business grows, you reach new levels, and there are new lessons to be learned at those levels, and then you're in the management level of the team, and dealing with, I have so many clients, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, you're dealing with different problems, wonderful problems, but new challenges all the time. But I mean, I think it's, for all of us who are entrepreneurs, we would be bored if it wasn't like that anyway. So, we all keep pushing to that, to all the different new levels and finding all those new challenges that we can do.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine one time where she was like trying to understand like why as entrepreneurs we're never like satisfied with where we're at. And I said, it's not our job to be satisfied, it's our job to be fulfilled. And I think the big distinction that a lot of us miss is if you're not fulfilled along the journey, you're missing the point. But if we were satisfied, we'd be bored, because that's intrinsically, what drives us. So I'm also curious, Elizabeth, you've shared such a great tip that will all help us optimize our legal side. What have you focused on optimizing in your own business to help you feel more fulfilled and ultimately more successful?
One thing that just struck me right as you were saying that, this is something that I sometimes forget because it's such a small thing that I do, but I do it every single day. And it has been a huge thing for my business is I keep on top of the money side of my business so minutely, and much more than I ever used to years ago. Like, every single morning, and then it's like on my daily checklist of things. The first thing I do is sit down and I look at the money of the business every single day. And sometimes it seriously takes me 3 minutes because I keep track of all my billable stuff, and it's 3 minutes. And sometimes it takes longer than that if I'm running payroll, doing whatever, and looking at actually dealing with things. But just that makes a huge difference in knowing what's going on. And over the last 24 hours, or in this case, over this last weekend, what sales happened, what expenses went out. Oh, everything's what I thought it was going to be, no problem. And if it wasn't, if something didn't go through or whatever, and even if it's not my job to solve that, even if there's someone on my team whose job it is, I know what happened. And so I think that's a big mistake that people can get in. Either if things are going terribly, you don't want to look at the money because you don't want to know how bad it is, right? Or if things are going great, it may seem like things are going great because you have great revenue, but all of a sudden the expenses are creeping up because there's a lot of people who are making major six figures and it's all going out the window.
And seven figures, and it's all going out the window.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I have clients who come in and I'm like, where's all this money? I see how much you generate and where's it go? And that's a incredibly common thing. And so really keeping on top of it, every single day I look at the money stuff for even just 3-5 minutes. It means that and then when you're looking at that, you're looking at everything that's going on in your business.
Yep,
so it's a great snapshot of things.
Yeah.
And even if things are bad, like something goes wrong or there's some crazy expense that I didn't see, I'm only 24 hours at the most, late in finding out about it. So it's easy to solve that problem as opposed to a whole month until you talk to your accountant or your bookkeeper. And that, it's so hard to fix things at that point. But if you just know 24 hours, then it's not a big deal. So
I love that. That's a great success habit. And I think part of being optimized is making sure that you have really, really good success habits that are keeping you dialed in to the most important information and decision points of your business. So that's beautiful. I love that you brought that one in today. And it just made me realize, so many times we don't have the right habits for success. And we're doing things out of habit that are actually sabotaging or taking us away from greater success. So I'm going to add this to the regular questions I ask my guests. Like, what's the success habit that keeps you dialed in and feeling powerful? So love that.
Yeah, I think habits are huge. These little tiny things that take 5, 10, 15 minutes can make the biggest difference because you do them consistently.
Yeah. And also I'm going to point out, you've said something several times, and I think you're so good at this, and I've actually seen you write about this for years, so I know you're really good at this. But I think you've forgotten it's such a critical part of your success is you use systems. Like you've alluded to them several times. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're scared of systems. They think systems are going to take my freedom away. I'm not going to have flexibility. I'm not going to enjoy my business, And I know for me, creating a system means that you're able to create a predictable result without having to use too much brain power to remember what you need to do. So I love that you were saying that without really pointing it out, because the system drives the success. And obviously, I think systems create freedom to be able to do more of what we enjoy the most without having to use all that brain power for, creating the systems over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because every time you make a decision, you only have so many decision units or something in your head every day, right? And so every time you have to make a new decision and think about things, it uses that up. And so, having like these things that I do every single day, first thing, makes a huge difference. And also, I'll be rebellious against myself and be like, I don't want to look at the money stuff today. I just want to be, I want to start on this big thing. And it's like, no, you have this checklist. You have to do it. And your project manager will see you didn't do it. And so you have to do it.
That's ultimate accountability, isn't it?
And so it's like, okay, it's in there. I have to do it. I know it's going to take me 3 or 5 minutes. So like those systems, I think, especially us entrepreneurs who have a rebelliousness about us anyway, it helps kind of keep us committed to the things that we actually, we're being rebellious against ourselves. It's really hilarious. So we'll commit to creating those habits, having those systems and checklists and all those things. And then that way, it does create great frameworks. And I think it does create more energy. You have more creativity because you have this kind of bounded place to do your creation in. And but I think, we are rebellious. We don't want to be tied down. It's actually very helpful.
I love that you said that word rebellious, because I think those words are synonymous, actually, entrepreneur and rebellion, because pretty much everyone I know is very rebellious. So and it's like we don't have our own bosses anymore, so we make our own worst bosses because we rebel against what we know will work the best.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite mantra or quote that keeps you inspired?
One of the things that for me, and actually I have multiple Post-it notes sitting out here that's about, is I did this work with someone where that you found your superpower, which was kind of like your, it's kind of like a purpose. It's kind of like an expression of who you are. And mine is connected calm. And so I have this Post-it notes all over I'm looking at right now that says, say, connected calm, and how would connected calm answer this email? And if I only worked as connected calm would work, how would that be? Like I have all these little reminders, and it really keeps me tied to who I am and what my purpose is. So I think it's really easy to get stressed out or to get wrapped up in anxiety about how should things be, or how should I write my marketing, or all these people talking about stuff on Facebook and getting tied up in things. And really knowing that purpose and that expression of who I am and coming back to it over and over helps me stay calm, and also get back to my purpose of what I'm doing in my business and how exactly do I help my clients and how am I going to write my copy, and everything ties into that exact thing. And having little Post-it note reminders all over really helps me.
Yeah, I know a few of those,
because I'll forget. I already know. And so I need like little reminders all over the place. So when I start freaking out about something, like
I love that. The one that was my theme for the last couple of years, I ended up making on my personal Facebook, the banner. I put it up there because there was a while where I was like, I really need to remember this, but mine's ease and grace. And just really like making decisions from that place and handling things from that place. And so, I feel like if I can move through this with ease and grace, I will make kind of decisions that will continue to elevate me. But boy, sometimes you're right. Like I need reminders everywhere. Ease and grace, ease and grace, ease and grace.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
It's helpful. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's helpful. Like things like that really do help because I forget who I am, kind of, and
You
get
get
all
caught up
wrapped
in
up
it.
in
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's great. I love
simple,
it.
simple little things like that make a huge difference. Yeah.
So Elizabeth, I of course I'm really excited to share you as a resource with my community because I want everybody to make sure that they're really upping their game in the legal department. And we're going to put a link up right here that shows people how to tap into your support to get trademarks. And I want to double check this, but I think when we were talking before, you told me you can actually work with people across the U.S. and even some people outside of the U.S., correct?
Right. Yeah. For trademark work, especially like that's done on a national basis,
Okay.
filing trademarks. So I can help people wherever they happen to be.
Great, that's awesome. And I highly recommend, even if you don't know yet what you're going to, if this is going to be a long-term program or not, do the research and tap into Elizabeth, or if you've got your own lawyer, great. But this is one of those things that can become a profit leak in your business if you don't have the right things set up. And what I don't want is for you to find out later that you should have done
Hmm.
certain things. And of course, that's just scratching the surface on all the different legal things, like getting legal documents for partnerships, and making sure your corporation status is set up, and all those things. This is a part of business that most entrepreneurs don't love. That's why we have amazing people like Elizabeth and our other business lawyers that support us. Is there anything else that's really exciting that's coming up for you?
Um, I don't know.
Like everything's
Yeah,
exciting
I'm
right
like
now.
all kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, really, I've in the middle of my right now. I've been kind of recalibrating all the different offerings and like trademark work.
Mhm.
Redesigned how I was helping clients with that and really optimizing it for what people need. And tightening things up in my website and stuff like that. So that's really what I've been working on with my project manager now is getting everything nice and tight so we can start expanding into 2015. Because actually, my intention for 2015 is bringing in other lawyers
Mhm.
um, and taking things bigger beyond. I can only help so many people at one time, obviously.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, and that's actually something that I'm doing that's different than a lot of lawyers who are kind of in this same field who are kind of going the information marketing route and they're creating programs, but I don't want to do that. I want to actually perform this as a service, which means I need to add more lawyers to be able to expand. So that's where things are going to be going in
Great.
2015.
And I think that's one of the most important decision points any entrepreneur looks at is how are you going to expand your time? It's
Mm-hmm.
not all, information products aren't always the right answer. So knowing the right model for you is really key. And I love that model for you. So Elizabeth, thanks so much for being here today. And as you're listening in here with Elizabeth and I'd love to know, like, what's the takeaway? What are you going to do differently, or what are you going to make a commitment to get handled if you maybe have been lagging a little bit with your own trademarks and business, the legal side of your business? If you're listening in on iTunes or Stitcher or one of our other sites, I'd love to have you come over to the show page at melaniebensonstrick.com and come over to the blog and share with us what's a takeaway from today. And of course, if you're listening here on the blog already, then we'd love to hear you share your insight in the comments below. We will be back again next week with another great guest, and I've got a doozy lined up for you. Another really fabulous, exciting, and very thought-provoking expert in the field of optimization. So thanks again, Elizabeth. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.